So that's now converted, it's changed over to Android, and you can see that because obviously you get your little Unity icon on the Android element there. Now, just changing over to Android like that, if you already have, let's say, a project that you've built specifically for PC or console, and you just change over to Android, although it will technically now export an APK file, it doesn't mean it's optimized for Android. It's not as easy as that. You do have to do a lot of optimization for it to work effectively on either an Android mobile or an iOS mobile. If you think of phones almost like building for a computer about 10 years ago, all right, you'll get an idea of their ability. Mobile phones can vary in terms of how powerful they are. Some of them can be extremely powerful, almost as powerful as a modern day PC. Some of them can be not very powerful. So depending on what you're aiming for, I would say try and make an app that kind of really works on an older phone, and you can guarantee it's going to work on pretty much all of the mobile devices. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you various optimization tricks to actually get the mobile games working perfectly on all mobile devices. Now, every now and then you might see like a little yellow message at the bottom. Just click clear. These are basically they're either warnings or advice that's coming up. Okay, nothing to worry about. All right, so one of the first things, if we move over to our game tab, just check your game and make sure you've got a simulator option. If you're working on an older version of Unity and this is not there, this is really going to prohibit you from following this course correctly. Okay, so I would definitely recommend updating your version of Unity. The simulator allows you to actually simulate all sorts of different mobile devices directly inside the Unity, which is great. Okay, so we've got a ton of different devices that we can actually simulate on, so you can get different devices. We can even rotate these, so we're looking at landscape or this way, and this is going to be so useful for us. Okay, so I'll choose something like a Samsung Galaxy J7 to begin with. Just going to go back to game, and one of the first things that we need to do is change our free aspect to a set resolution. So I'm going to go with 1280 by 720 landscape. The reason why I'm doing that, the higher the resolution, the more processor power it's going to take, and on a mobile device, processor power is the kind of thing that's going to control your frames per second. If you overload the processor, that's just going to limit your frames per second. Now, if you think about it, in a mobile device, it just doesn't have any kind of fans. It doesn't have kind of the airflow that you get in the PC. As such, it's going to get extremely hot. And when it gets hot, it's going to start to try and cool itself down. And it does that by limiting or bottlenecking your performance. So you're going to get lower frames per second. By keeping our resolution relatively low, we're not overloading the processor or the CPU. Then if we go to edit and project settings, if we come down to quality, this is going to show us our levels of quality. Well, on a mobile device, we really don't need the quality to be ultra. Okay, we can actually get away with either high or medium. And since the game that I'm going to be making is relatively cartoony, okay, I definitely don't need to go for ultra. So I can actually click on medium, and I'm just going to uncheck all of these boxes below medium. Okay, and now because I'm on Android, it's basically going to work at medium level quality. That's going to change all of these elements that you can see below here, so that it's optimized for a medium quality. That's going to increase your frames per second. Notice that there's no anti-aliasing, so if you do notice a lot of jagged edges on your screen, probably just change this to something like 2 times multi-sampling. Everything else is good. Shadows, I'm going to keep shadows on at the moment simply for light baking, and then I'm going to come back to this later and switch this off. We're not going to be using any real-time lights in our mobile device, alright, which is going to be so much more effective for the processor, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now the VSync, I want to change this from every V blank to don't sync at all. So what a VSync does, it basically waits until your processor has fully processed the latest frame, and this creates a bit of a delay. So the processor has to do all of the work and then pass the command through to the graphics processor to actually render the scene. If you switch off VSync, the processor only has to process part of the frame, and then it passes the commands through to the graphics processor, and that begins to actually draw the frame even before the processor's finished processing. So it makes your frame rates a lot faster. However, one of the issues with switching off VSync, if you have very, very fast movement in any kind of a device, it can lead to screen tearing. This is where you have one frame rendered at the top and a second frame rendered below, and then maybe a third frame rendered at the bottom of the screen, and you can see these visible tears between each frame. I doubt we're going to see that on mobile. It's not going to be moving that fast. Okay. However, VSync, the ability to switch it off, only works on Android devices. You don't have this option on iOS. So the iOS phones should technically be slightly faster and slightly better anyway, so they shouldn't have a problem with VSync. But for Android, I would definitely recommend switching this off. Okay, so what we want to do now is come to the player section, and we're going to come to the resolution and presentation, and make sure that you're on the Android tab. And where we have our default orientation, instead of auto rotation, I definitely want it to be landscape. I think it's just landscape right. That means the game will only work in landscape mode. So if you flip your mobile phone over, it's not just suddenly going to try and make it fit a portrait mode. It can only work in landscape mode. Okay, native aspect ratio. Yeah, let's keep that. Basically, it will try and match the aspect ratio of the phone. Everything else is good. Yep, okay, that's fine. Then we're going to come down to the other settings. Our color space, we're going to keep on gamma. Okay, because gamma is technically faster than the linear color space. You do have an option between the two, and gamma is much more effective for mobile phones. Not all mobile phones support linear color space anyway. All phones support gamma color space. We do have a couple of graphics APIs running, so it's fine, we'll keep those. Multi-threaded rendering is good. Now for our scripting, when we come down here, we can see that our script backend is set to mono. Now for our Android mobile devices, we can actually change over to this IL2 CPP. It takes longer to actually build your device, build your app, but it's going to run so much faster on the mobile device. This is because it automatically converts it into binary code. So it's auto-converted when it actually reaches the mobile phone. With the mono, it's actually passing it over in a certain language that the mobile device then has to actually convert as you're playing, so it makes it a little bit slower. But this option looks like it's only available in the Android devices and not in the Mac. Minimum API level, at the moment I'm going all the way back to API level 19, but if you want to limit the phone, let's say you only want to target like newer mobile phones, you can obviously go with whichever version you want, but that's going to limit your audience who can actually play that. This is important if, for example, you know you've got a game where it's very, very demanding. You know that older phones just aren't going to be able to support that, so then you'll limit it to a certain operating system. Okay, but I know that this should work on almost every phone. Target API level is basically just going to find the highest installed. All right, so it's not going to limit your phone in any way. And our active input handling, we're going to use the input manager old as opposed to the new input system. Okay, but if you do want to use the new input system, what I would recommend is choosing both in that case. And yep, everything else is good. So that's the kind of settings that we need to set up ready for our mobile devices.